In today's video, we're going to talk to Matt Hackett to see how he got started with JavaScript, the world of game development, and what he's actually going to talk about in the upcoming JSGamedev conference, which is happening on September 28 and 29 online. Okay, hi everyone, welcome. We have today with us Matt Hackett, who is an independent game developer based in the US who writes, draws, and podcasts. He wrote and illustrated how to make a video game all by yourself, which has been like an Amazon first bestseller in multiple categories. Welcome with us, Matt. Can you please tell us like more about yourself and like what you do?
Oh, definitely. Great intro. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm Matt Hackett, author of my book, How to Make a Video Game All
Oh,
by Yourself.
cool.
Super proud of it. It took me 2 years to write it. I launched it, I think it was last year. Ooh, time really flies. I'm an independent game dev. I'm a solo dev these days. I make all my games myself. I'm currently working on 2 or 3 games. I should only be focusing on one, but if I had to pick one for anybody to check out, please go look at Pixel Washer. It's my new JavaScript based game, and it's got a Steam page and there's a playable demo on itch. There's a whole lot more about me to find out. I've got a podcast and a YouTube channel called Make the Game, but that's the gist of it. Solo dev, wrote a book, check it out. Play my game right now in your browser. So please do.
Oh, that's cool. So you have a game too. That's pretty interesting. I will definitely look at it. I'm a big fan of games, and I'm pretty sure like a lot of us web developers love this kind of gamey side of websites and stuff like that. Like we see it using 3JS and WebGL, all that kind of stuff. So that looks amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably a
Uh,
bit strange of a JavaScript developer because I still like to use the old school Canvas 2D API, and that's what my game Pixel Washer
oh.
uses. And in Pixel Washer, it's all about washing individual pixels. So it's one of these really pixelated games. It's very zoomed in. It has a resolution similar to like old school about Super Nintendo, Nintendo era games. And it really comes down to the individual pixels that you're washing when you play the game. So the Canvas 2D API is just perfect for that because using JavaScript, I can manipulate individual pixel data. So it's a great matchup of like the tech I like to use and the kind of game I'm making in this case. So it's a really good marriage there.
Perfect, perfect. Really nice to know. So we have got a couple of questions for Matt today. So first question is like, what inspired you, Matt, to like pursue a career in game development with JavaScript? Can you like tell us more about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. I've got a good story for this because, like, I've been making games for 30 years. I started with QBasic just for fun. I would just make games, literally taking it. I would take my games on a little floppy disk to my friend's house just so we could play them together. That's how I got started forever ago. And then in high school, games like PlayStation came out, 3D games, and the math always felt like over my head. I knew 2D, but I wasn't good at trigonometry. I wasn't good at calculus. I was in those classes and not doing well. So game development felt like something I just couldn't do, right? So I kind of put it off my radar for a while. I focused on other stuff, went to college for different reasons. But then JavaScript around 2010 or so started to become a viable medium for games because previously it was really slow, right? Especially in 2010. I remember we were working on, a buddy of mine and I were working on a JavaScript game when Firefox added hardware support for making like the Canvas 2D API I was talking about faster. And it was like, 30 times faster. It went from we were making kind of simple, just puzzle games that didn't require a lot of optimization to the first game we ever launched, like officially like a professional game made in JavaScript was
Mhm.
called Onslaught Arena, and it launched with the Chrome Web Store in 2010. And it was really only because JavaScript kind of like became a technology that was suitable for games. Like I feel like we take that for granted these days. Like 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't really viable, but like it was all I knew because I was a web developer and I had friends who I worked at Yahoo and I had a bunch of friends who knew JavaScript and loved making games too. And we were all like, oh, it's a shame it's so slow. And like we should all be using Flash or we should be writing our games in C++. We know like Unity didn't exist back then. Unreal wasn't a thing back then. So JavaScript really became good enough and we just jumped on it. And my old company, Lost Decade Games, was one of the first like companies to really push HTML5. We had a podcast called Lostcast that really pushed JavaScript and web games. And so that was a whole part of my career where JavaScript really was my entryway. JavaScript opened the door for me to get into game development. And so like I'll always kind of love it extra for that reason, is because it let me get into game.
Yeah, that's really interesting story actually, because I see a lot of people really love the JavaScript because it can literally allow you to do anything. Among those, just like game development, and I think I tried like game development for some time before using JavaScript, and using before like C++ and SDL and OpenGL and stuff like that. It was pretty interesting. And actually, when jumping from this like low level kind of place to something like JavaScript in the browser and Canvas 2D and 3JS, which I really like, by the way. So I can completely feel the like the feeling you have against JavaScript. So that's, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That's great. I feel the love. Yeah, great
Yeah,
platform.
absolutely. So speaking of JavaScript and its like wide ecosystem and like it can literally allow you to do anything. So kind of like what are the unique challenges and opportunities when working with JavaScript for kind of like game development? Like
Yeah,
in your
that's a
opinion.
great question. Great question. And right off the bat, it's like JavaScript is one of the reasons it's the most popular programming language in the world is because it's native to the web. Any browser you find these days has JavaScript built into it. And that makes it super portable, right? You can play it anywhere. Like my game is a desktop, Pixel Washer is a desktop PC game built for Steam, but it runs in my mobile browser right now. So one of the challenges is it can be everywhere and it is everywhere, but you got to kind of figure out where to start. And that's a real challenge, right? For me as an indie game developer
Yeah.
targeting Steam, Steam users really are almost offended if you first make a mobile game and then bring it to desktop, right? And JavaScript games can be anywhere. As I said, Steam users
Oh,
don't want to see it mobile first. So if you care about, if you're making a hardcore kind of more PC centric game, that's really the place to start. And then maybe consider mobile as like a port version if that's important to you. Mobile's never been
mhm.
more popular, so it's also a great place to start. And that's actually one of the places that my company, Lost Decade Games, got its start back in 2011. Mobile games, especially JavaScript games, were becoming huge, right? And there were all these web portals that would actually pay for us to make mobile games. So we targeted mobile specifically for the kind of games we were making that could be white labeled, which means a company will pay you and you are then on the hook to put like their banner on your game, or when the game is over, a specific call to action that they want to see, that says Armor Games, or whatever it would be at the time, right? And so the challenge that we saw when first getting started with JavaScript in 2010 was first, like, which platform are we building for? Because it can be anywhere, but you have to approach that with intent, right? And then JavaScript also, I think for almost any game you make, you've really got to take optimization into consideration. It's like extra important. Low level languages like C++ are super fast, and you can often take that brute force approach. You know what I mean? With like a for loop
Yeah.
where you just like
Mhm.
blast pixels to the screen. But in JavaScript, because it's a scripting language, it's inherently slower. It's everywhere, but it doesn't have that low level power. And so when you make a JavaScript game, you have to, from the very beginning, think more about optimization, right? And that's a critical part of it. And so you might want to make games that require less optimization, like a puzzle game, or you might want to make this is a common thing that I do. This actually, I make low resolution games, right? Like my games are not big old HD 1920 by 1080 games. Usually when I'm making JavaScript, usually I'll have this kind of Nintendo resolution, like a tiny, like Pixel Washer
Mhm.
is 512 by 288. It's just a little rectangle.
Ah,
And that
cool.
really helps solve that optimization problem that comes in with JavaScript. So those are a few of the challenges. It's definitely a tricky language to use, but the good news is it's so easy to get into. It's a friendly language to start with, right?
Yeah, speaking of friendliness, I think I completely agree with you, Matt, on that kind of regard. I found it super easy actually to build anything, especially like using a canvas, and you can do a Google search. Oh, how can I use the canvas 2D? And now because you have Chat GPT and tons of YouTube videos out there, anyone literally can just go ahead and pick it up and actually start using it. And they can actually feel the joy and the feeling of actually building stuff. I mean, if you compare it to something like, as you said, with C++, it's performance and everything, but I don't know, maybe just I don't find it super joyful to work with from that kind of side. So I think that's a lot of like what a lot of people love in this particularly. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Actually, that's pretty intense when working with JavaScript. I think your side of the story just made it a lot clearer for a lot of people now. So that's pretty good.
It's good to hear.
So Matt, as of your real like huge experience in game development and books and stuff, it would be great like if you can highlight a recent projects or a game that you've actually worked on and tell us like what made it so special And
Definitely. Yeah. So I've got an interesting situation recently where one project kind of made the other better. So I've had this project called Witchmore, which is a game about witchcraft and creating like a witch spells, right? Putting materials together to create black magic. And the problem is like Witchmore is a really big game that's probably going to take me years to finish. And because of that, especially as a solo developer, it's kind of become this kind of big monster, right? It's this thing that takes even small changes take a long time to make in Witchmore. And so I kind of stepped back just a bit to let that project percolate. And then I started up a new project, a side, and that one's called Pixel Washer, and it's a much simpler game. Witchmore is a very complicated game where you can do lots of things. There's tons of verbs, and Pixel Washer, all you do is wash pixels. It's the simplest game, and it's helped me answer so many questions. People will ask, "Oh, is the game going to have this, or is the game going to have that?" And because of the clear direction in Pixel Washer, I can so easily answer those questions. I always have them at the top of my mind. Whereas with Witchmore, people ask questions and I'm like, And my answer is usually yes, because in a world where you can create magic and witchcraft and go create all kind or gather all kinds of ingredients, that's a game that could have almost anything in it. And in Pixel Washer, it's easier just to say no, 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 no. You can't pick stuff up. You can't anything. Wash pixels, right? And Pixel Washer is a much smaller game, and Witchmore is a much bigger game. But I've already seen, even after only working on Pixel Washer for a month or two, these benefits that it sends to Witchmore. I'm learning all these lessons from the simplicity of Pixel Washer that's really helping me think about Witchmore in a clearer way. It's been so advantageous. I've been watching lots of space videos. Forgive the tangent, but I swear this is going somewhere. We have the Earth and we have the Moon, right? And the Earth is so much bigger than the Moon, but like they are an important pair, right? The Moon tugs at the Earth, and that's how we get tides and stuff, right? And they have this relationship together, and that's kind of how I'm seeing this my two projects here. And so I think the advice I would give to other people is if you have a big project that feels, and I know a lot of solo developers especially have this problem because I talk to devs like this, but if you have a big project that's getting out of hand and you're starting to lose direction with, sometimes a step away for just a short period of time, you don't want to let it decay. You don't want it to rot for a year or something, but step away for a bit and try to find a tiny, tiny project that you can just crank out, get it out fast, like a week, two tops, get it into players' hands, pivot away from your big project, find something simple. And I feel like that simple project can really help inform that bigger project and give it clear direction. So I know that's a bit rambly of a story, but and it's kind of counterintuitive because especially as a solo dev or small teams, I usually advise people to focus it down and simplify and only have like a smaller focus. And so the advice to start a side project seems like overscoping, right? But the whole point is to get that lesson in focusing and minimizing. So I think it's a good practice, and it's not that expensive. It's a week or two. If you're working on a game for years, like a week or two to take a little side project vacation or something, I think can really help out.
definitely, that's pretty interesting story actually, and I really like the advice, and I think a lot of people, including me, are gonna just find that advice kind of like interesting because as developers, myself and quite a lot of other developers I'm talking about, like I know from YouTube and the comments and Twitter and everywhere, they're just like pushing too hard stuff they can like sometimes not control and forgetting about like taking a break or looking from a completely different perspective into something, or maybe as you said, maybe just trying to get some feedback before like the game or the project is finalized. I think those are really golden advices from Matt, and I'm pretty sure like a lot of people are going to appreciate that. So speaking of advices and the great advice that Matt just gave us, so Matt, another question, another really awesome question that a lot of people are actually going to have benefit from is, what advice do you have like for inspiring game developers looking to get started with like JavaScript?
That's a great question. So I get this question a lot because I have, my kind of entry level book, How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself, and I also make JavaScript games. I actually had someone reach out recently, and they were saying that like they began with JavaScript and things started to get kind of like, how do I architect this, or should I jump ship? Should I use an actual game engine, stuff like that? My advice is start with JavaScript, love JavaScript, stick with it, and just make stuff. Don't overthink it in the beginning. I have this tutorial I wrote like over a decade ago, but it still holds up. It's called How to Make a Simple HTML5 Canvas Game. And it's like 3 pages long or something. The code is on GitHub. It couldn't be simpler. It is the most popular tutorial I've ever written in my life. And it is the most basic way to make a JavaScript game. It's like one sprite here, one sprite there. The code couldn't be simpler. I walk through almost line by line what each line does. People have found this so helpful. And some developers have taken that game, and very tiny as it is, they've kind of compounded on it over time and they created a whole game out of it. And that's a lot of the times when developers will hit me up and they'll be like, okay, I have this game, it's playable, it's fun, I like it, and I feel like I have to take it to the next level now. And they want to, like I mentioned, jump ship to Unreal or whatever it is. And my advice is to stick with it until you have no choice, right? Like a great example right now is Vampire Survivors is a huge hit of an indie game, right? Millions of copies sold. That was made in JavaScript. I think, I might be wrong, but I think it was made in Phaser Engine, even JavaScript. Definitely JavaScript. And that game sold millions as that version. And eventually they did hire a team to redo it in a modern engine, to get it on consoles, to make it lightning fast, and all the problems that JavaScript is a little weaker at. It's a little weaker optimization. It's a little weaker if you want to get it on PS5, right? Stuff like that. But they used the JavaScript game for so long. It made so much money. It enabled them to hire a whole team of people. And to this day, Ponkel, the solo dev who made Vampire Survivors, still uses that JavaScript version of the game as a tool to create content, because that's what Ponkel knows how to use. He makes dozens, hundreds of weapons, all these cool effects on the screen. He doesn't want to learn Unity. He has a team for that. Right. And so I think that a lot of developers who begin with Java, I did this actually. We started with JavaScript. We felt like we had to jump ship to Unity. That was a mistake, came right back to JavaScript. So my advice, start simple. Start with a simple tutorial. Your game, as long as it's playable, if you can see sprites on the screen, if you can move the characters around, if you can do your puzzle pieces, whatever, if it's playable, ship it. It's good. You only ever need to rethink it if you hit the, like you'll have money, gamers will be throwing money at you if you ever need to change your platform. You might not ever need to. So that's my advice. Start simple, make your playable game, get it to people, and don't even think about rewriting it. You might not ever.
Absolutely. That's a really good advice, actually. And I think I can benefit myself, like studying by myself, from this advice, because when I was doing some game development before, very long time ago, like 6 years or something, I literally had the same urge to move from, I was doing like C++ and I was trying to build a game out of very small engine that I created. It was a 2D game. Everything was working, but I was having this urge to jump ship into like Unity or Unreal Engine, just because like a lot of people are loving this and because it looks, big and too many controls and you can do a lot of stuff. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't. I jumped ships in JavaScript and web development at the end. But I think a lot of developers actually have this kind of issues, and they would definitely actually benefit from the advice that Matt just gave you guys. Definitely just start simple, keep it simple, actually just ship your first version and see how it goes. Yeah. So Matt, for like the last question we have today for the GS Game Dev, so can you like tell us a little more about your talk at the GS Game Dev? By the way, Matt is going to be a speaker at GS Game Dev, so we can learn exactly what he's going to actually bring for us there.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. JS Game Dev Summit. Here's my book, How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself, and my talk is How to Make a Web Game All by Yourself. So you just replace web game here. And for my focus, it's a focus on JavaScript, because that's kind of my bread and butter. And I've been making JavaScript games, 14 years. Could that be right? Something like that. And I'm very proud of my book that I wrote, 200-page book. It's a 20-minute talk, as is the format for the conference. And so I've kind of distilled down what I thought were kind of the most relevant bits to making a game specific to JavaScript. And when you're making a game all by yourself, whether it's any game or specifically a JavaScript game, I talk about things like it's important that you know that you are the producer. You're the one in charge of everything, right? It all comes down to you: the art, the music, the sound, the code, the design. And I talk about how you don't have to do all that yourself, right? There's so much good music out there that you can use today. I have gigs of assets, just sprites, 3D objects, whatever. And it can feel overwhelming when you're making a JavaScript or web game game all by yourself, but the web is out there and it wants you to use these assets, like itch, especially itch.io is wonderful for just hundreds, thousands of assets. They want you to use them, put them in your games. I also talk about the concept of scratching your itch when you're making a game by yourself. I think it's extra important that you care about the project, that you have that kind of itch. And I think itch is a good word for that because it's like you have the urge to scratch it. You need to be compelled to make the game by yourself, because if you're not excited about it, if it's not itchy, if it's not like, keeping you up at night sometimes, making you jump out of bed in the morning, then by yourself, you're going to have a really hard time finishing the game. And so those are some of the things I talk about. Also, JavaScript, I talk about how I make vanilla JavaScript games. I write JavaScript by hand from scratch. Like you can do that if you really want to. JavaScript's never been better. I write an entity component system, and that's just how I like to work. I use a bunch of other open source tools, but if you want to use an engine, there's great ones out there. I recommend Phaser for 2D. I have friends who worked on Play Canvas, a fantastic 3D engine. There's really so many engines out there. There's even ones where you don't have to learn how to code, drag and drop, like a construct engines. Those are good to look at. As a few different versions. That's what the talk is: how to make a web game all by yourself. You're the only one working on the game, and you're going to be using JavaScript. So I advise how to pick an engine, how to pick a game concept, stuff like that. And then at the end, this is special. This isn't in my book at all because this is unique to web games. But I talk about leveraging the web. Since you're on the web, why not do things the web does really well? Like, games can go viral if there's like a little share feature. We all saw, what was it, Wordle? Really took off in recent years because there was a little share button, send it to Twitter. And most games can probably do that, but the web, like a web game, is perfect for that. You can do things like, create an image and embed it. I've done this where using the Canvas 2D API again, I'll have a game create an image for you, and it can put your name on it. It can put my banner on it, or if I want to, and it can tell you your results of the game, your high score, or whatever. And then people can take that image, blast it all over Twitter, help your game become viral perhaps, or at least just get more users interested. So that's what I talk about near the end, is a few different ways that I like to leverage the web to help your game kind of get attention and spread all around the web. It's a web game. Why not be more on the web? But I'm really excited about the talk. It was fun to put together. I do a bunch of YouTube videos like this for my channel, Make the Game, but this talk is longer and I hope more polished, a little more higher production or something, but it was really fun to put together, and I felt like it was kind of smooth to make because I worked so hard on my book. Like, this book is permanently just in my head now, and JavaScript games, just over a decade of experience there. So it was really easy to put them together to me like peanut butter and jelly. So that's my talk, how to make a web game all by yourself. I hope folks will check it out.
Awesome, Matt. Yeah, I'm definitely super excited to actually watch your talk, Git Nation, and it's happening on September 28th and 29th, like a 2 days full of game development sort of conference with a lot of people, including Matt and many other great developers and game developers particularly. So I'm really excited to actually watch the talk. I'm a big fan of game development. I know a lot of people are actually big fan of that. And because this is a little more exclusive, so I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to be finding it super interesting. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thanks guys, thank you Matt for joining us today. It was really, really great having you today. All the experiences you had and all the advices you gave us throughout the talk and the interview. That was pretty awesome. I know a lot of developers on the channel or outside are going to be super finding this super beneficial, and they're going to just use this to make their potentially next entrepreneur or indie game devs or something. So thank you, Matt, for joining us today.
This was super fun. Such great questions. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.